This is Histories and Mysteries. I'm Jessica.
And I'm Richelle.
And you'll probably notice that Ashley is not here. Like last week when we recorded, we kind of recorded the same day. So she's still not here because she's taking some time to herself. So we miss her. I'm sure everybody else misses her too, because I find that the shows are very chaotic when it's just Richelle and I.
Ashley is the only thing that keeps us in check. Or we just go off like way off topic without her.
Accurate.
Already.
It's because we're the children of the group.
Yeah.
And she's the grandma.
Oh, I was going to say mommy, but...
The mommy of the group.
She's going to rip you to shreds, Jess.
I'm used to it. She loves me. All right. So, I forgot what you were doing. I have it in the chat thingy because it's like the Lost Children of the Angolese.
No.
Alleghenies. Alginese.
Maybe you'll get it at some point. Alleghenies.
Oh, cool. Not at all how it's spelled.
Alleghenies?
So, whatever she just said is what her story's going to be on.
Yep.
And I'm going to be kind of backpacking off last week's episode and talking about horrible experiments through time. So, on my list was MK Ultra, but I just talked about them, so I'm not going to do it again. So, and you've probably heard of most of these. I heard of most of these. There was like one or two that I hadn't heard of, so let's just get going. So, the first one is the Milgram obedience experiment.
Milgram obedience. It sounds familiar.
Yeah, I'll know exactly what it is when I start talking about it. So, would you think of yourself as an independent thinker, or do you usually do what you're told?
That depends.
Okay. So, do you usually do things when you want to do them, how you want to do them, or do you always have in the back of your mind, oh, if I do this, they're going to think of me as this thing? Do you care what other people think?
Again, that depends on what I'm doing.
Okay. So this experiment pretty much showed us how much we will listen to someone just because they're wearing a white coat.
Oh, can I guess what this one? I think I know what this one is. Is this the one where they have people on one side of the wall and they tell people they're electrocuting somebody on the other side of the wall?
Yeah.
And they make them keep ramping it up?
Yeah.
Even though there really is nobody on the other side, but am I right?
Sort of. You're half right.
Okay. Yeah.
You're half right. So, like Richelle was saying, the one that they were told about the experiment was that the experiment required them to continue. And the participant had to push a button that would electrically shock another person in a different room. But the reality of this was that the person being shocked was actually an actor, and no electricity was getting through to them. They sold the experiment by writhing in pain, screaming, and begging the participant to stop. But the researcher would tell them to up the voltage, and they did. Eventually, as the voltage got higher and higher, the actor would stop moving altogether. Surprisingly, 65% of participants kept going, knowing they were causing another person pain. And even after the actor had stopped thrashing and appeared to be dead. That's wild.
Yeah. I see in this case, okay, here's the thing is I think I would catch on to I had hope I was smart enough to like catch on that there was something going on.
Mm-hmm. I don't know, because like it also like begs the question, right? Like what type of participants were they getting to join this experiment, right?
That's true. So when I was in university, I took one of my like electives. We had to take a science, so I took psychology, and part of that was like basically participating in some of these. But none of them were ever like that
Oh, that's good.
insane.
Yeah. So, but yeah, like I really wonder if they got like credible people to join, or if they literally went to a jail or something and were like, hey, you come with me, you know? Or if it was a mixture, I don't know. But
Well, if they were good researchers, they would be a mixture.
yeah, but who knows? All right, the next one you definitely heard of. Are you free of ego? Do you believe you'd act correctly if you were given a lot of authority over someone else?
I know exactly where you're going with this.
Yeah.
This is the Stanford prison experiment, isn't it?
Yes, it is. So, for those of you that don't know, guards and prisoners were assigned to a group of test subjects at random. Participants were paid $15 per day, or $87 per day in 2015 currency, to simulate being a prisoner or a guard as realistically as possible. The inmates were kidnapped from their homes, subjected to strict searches, and they were given new identities. So from the get-go, they're just being ripped from their homes and being subjected to awful, awful things. Guards were handed wooden batons and advised not to harm the convicts physically, but to make their life as chaotic and powerless as possible. Zimbardo, who was the psychologist that led this experiment, said, "We're going to take away their identity in a variety of ways." So basically, he told the guards, who were supposedly chosen at random, and inmates were forced to stand naked for hours on end, waste themselves in a bucket, and sleep on the bare concrete by these guards. A convict, who was only identified as number 8612, began to scream and rave after only 36 hours and had to be removed from the research. The experiment lasted only 6 days, and 1/3 of the jail guards were deemed to be truly sadistic. It took less than a week to turn a perfectly normal person into a sadist, or to rob him of his identity and completely dehumanize him. So, do you have any thoughts on that, Richelle?
Okay, this experiment's wild, and it's not the only one that's been done like that. There have been others after. But like just reading about it, for one, after like working in a basically decommissioned prison and spending a lot of time around like actual guards and stuff, I'm not surprised that happened. I couldn't imagine being on either side of that.
Right. I would not want to be an inmate. But
Yeah.
I mean, like, I guess like it also follows the same line of the Milgram experiment, right? Where it's like people will do whatever someone in a white coat says.
Yep.
Right? So it's wild.
Also, it just goes to show like when authority is given to the wrong kind of people.
Yeah. You know what would have been like really interesting is if after that initial experiment, if they reversed the roles to see what happened.
Yeah.
I think that would have been really fascinating. So the next
I almost think like one of two things would happen. Either like the inmates would turn on the guards, like when they became the guards themselves, or it would just not, like, the experiment would fail completely, like nothing would happen if they.
Yeah. Oh yeah, 100%. But I also think like it would be kind of like payback, right?
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah.
So the next one is another experiment that you'll probably know if you've ever taken psychology. Harry Harlow was a jerk.
Yeah.
He was a behavioral psychologist, and he specialized in depressing rhesus macaques in mind-bending tests. He said, "I loathe cats." He despises dogs. And then he also said, "How could you possibly enjoy monkeys?" It's probably safe to say that those feelings extended to people based on his shady past.
How
We'll never
could you
know.
possibly enjoy monkeys?
They're so
Watch a
freaking
video of a
cute.
fucking monkey. They are hilarious.
Hey, it, like,
They're
watching them-
terrifying. They will kill you.
Yeah.
But like,
Yeah.
they're so cute.
But it was so cute watching these. Like, I felt so
Also,
awful for these monkeys.
This is like another one. We paused for a moment. This is another one that I knew right away when she mentioned monkeys. And this experiment makes me so sad because it is so sad watching the babies like try and cling on like a.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
I'm gonna spoil the experiment.
Yeah, I know. It's so sad. It's traumatizing, honestly. So this is called the child isolation experiment, in which infant monkeys were separated from their mothers at a really young age to see what happened to their development. And this was one of his child development experiments, which is really sad. Infant monkeys were often given a monkey doll as a security blanket, but all of the monkeys involved suffered from serious mental and physical difficulties, including poor digestion and lower weights. So, we've established that Harry Harlow was a strange, sick man who didn't get nearly enough love from mommy. And on this list, he receives 2 entries, with the next experiment taking sadistic, terrifying shape. Harlow is noted for using flowery language to describe his experiments. For example, trigger warning. He referred to his forced mating table as his rape rack. And he also had a pit of despair. And that was probably the darkest and most horrific of his studies. Harlow would place these little baby monkeys into the pit of despair until they went nuts and hopeless with depression, just to see what would happen. Just heinous. I hate people. Harlow separated 3-month-old and 3-year-old monkeys from their mothers and kept them in the pit of despair for nearly 3 months at a time. The animals that resulted would barely eat or move, committing themselves to hopeless cowering in the cell's corner. These monkeys would then be forced to mate and foster children whom the damaged monkeys would horribly mistreat. A quote from Harlow said, "Not even in our most wicked thoughts could we have produced a surrogate as terrible as these real monkey mothers were." So if your vet's name is Harlow, you should probably get a new one. It's very sad to watch. I mean, like, watch it at your own risk if you want to watch it. Like, all these can probably be found on YouTube.
It's so sad because that's basically like the premise is like there's 2 surrogate mothers and one is like has the like the food, but it's like completely uncomfortable and just like a cage, whereas the other one doesn't have like the food that the baby needs, but it's soft. And the babies would always cling on to like the soft mom.
Oh, I'm so sad. I just want to snuggle my baby now. Next we have one that I actually hadn't heard of. It's Britches at UC Riverside. But maybe you've heard of it, Richelle?
I don't. The name doesn't sound familiar, but that doesn't mean I haven't.
Okay. It's a short
see.
one. At first glance, the purpose of this experiment seemed noble. Basically, researchers needed access to blinded animals in order to test a brain implanted sonar device that would help humans who were blind. Some non-sighted persons, such as Ben Underwood, have developed an impressive kind of echolocation in which they would use their tongue to map their environment. The transcranial gadget that was tested on Britches the monkey was created in the intention of providing blind patients around the world with the gift of echolocation. The problem was that Britches was not blind. Don't look at pictures of this because it's awful. The solution that the scientists came up with was to blind Britches by sewing his eyes shut.
I don't care. If it's on a person, I'll look it up. If it's on an animal, I don't want to see it. Is that bad?
No, it's horrible. Like, it's
Wait, what's it called? The
Britches at UC Riverside. Or just say Britches the monkey.
Oh, maybe.
Right? He was torn away from his mother at birth, and his eyes were sewn shut.
Oh, it was a monkey. See, I thought you were talking about a person, and I was like, oh, that's fine.
No, it's a monkey.
Oh, he's so cute. But you see, it was like a little, oh.
So, ripped from his mom at birth, his eyes were sewn shut. And then he's forced to wear a giant and clunky apparatus on his head that emitted a loud and constant screeching sound. Thankfully, the Animal Liberation Front were tipped off by a student at the university, and there was a raid on the lab. Britches was finally rescued at 5 weeks old. This amazing raid also released 467 mice, cats, opossums, pigeons, rabbits, and rats. The raiders took a video of the conditions and the experiments being done and handed their tape over to PETA. The National Institute of Health then conducted an 8-month investigation into the program at UC Riverside and deemed it appropriate and safe, and that no consequences would be necessary. And then I have one more.
Okay.
Are we ready for it?
I think so.
It's also not one I've ever heard of. So, the Tuskegee experiment began in 1932 when syphilis, a dangerous venereal disease, had no recognized treatments. 600 African American men in Macon County, Alabama, were involved in this initiative, which aimed to study the disease's full development after being enticed by the promise of free medical care. The participants were mostly sharecroppers, and many of them had never seen a doctor before. The participants, 399 men with latent syphilis and a control group of 201 men who were free of the disease, were told they were being treated for bad blood, which was a term that was commonly used in the area at the time to refer to a variety of ailments. Despite the fact that penicillin became the prescribed therapy for syphilis in 1947, some 15 years into the trial, the men were only given placebos, such as aspirin and mineral supplements. Local physicians in Macon County were persuaded by PHS, which is the public health, researchers not to treat the subjects, and instead a study was conducted at the Tuskegee Institute. The school, now known as Tuskegee University, was founded in 1881 with Booker T. Washington as its first teacher. Researchers gave no effective care as the men died, became blind or insane, or experienced other serious health problems as a result of their untreated syphilis in order to trace the disease's whole evolution. When Peter Buxton, a PhD venereal disease investigator in San Francisco, learned about the Tuskegee study in the mid-1960s, he conveyed his concerns to his superiors, claiming that it was unethical. PHS authorities organized a committee to assess the study in response, but ultimately decided to keep it going with the purpose of tracking the volunteers until they all died. Autopsies were performed, and the project data could then be analyzed. Buxton then leaked the news to a journalistic acquaintance who passed it on to Associated Press reporter Jean Heller. In July 1972, Heller revealed the story, causing public uproar and forcing the study's closure. By that time, 28 people had died of syphilis, 100 more had died of related complications, and at least 40 spouses had been diagnosed with it, with 19 children being born with the disease. Congress held hearings on the Tuskegee experiment in 1973, and the study's surviving participants, as well as the heirs of those who died, were awarded a $10 million out-of-court settlement the following year. In addition, new standards have been issued to protect human subjects in government-funded research initiatives in the United States. In part to foster racial healing, President Bill Clinton issued a 1997 apology stating, "The United States government did something that was wrong, deeply, profoundly, morally wrong. It is not only in remembering that shameful past that we can make amends and repair our nation, but it is in remembering the past that we can build a better present and a better future." Tuskegee wasn't the first syphilis study to be conducted in an unethical manner, though. In 2010, then President Barack Obama and other government officials apologized for a decades-old U.S.-sponsored experiment in Guatemala. During that investigation, over 700 men and women, prisoners, soldiers, and mental patients were inadvertently infected with syphilis. Hundreds more were exposed to other sexually transmitted illnesses as part of the study. And this was done without their knowledge or consent between the years of 1946 and 1948. The goal of the study was to see if penicillin could prevent syphilis infection rather than only cure it. Some of the individuals who were infected were never treated medically. The study's findings, which were conducted with the collaboration of Guatemalan government authorities, were never made public. Dr. John Cutler, the project's American public health researcher, went on to become a lead researcher in the Tuskegee experiments. When historian Susan Reverby was researching the Tuskegee study after Cutler's death in 2003, she came across the documents of the Guatemala tests. In 2010, she presented her findings to U.S. government officials. Soon after, Secretary of State Hillary Clinton and Secretary of Health and Human Services Kathleen Sebelius apologized for the STD research, and President Barack Obama apologized to Guatemala's president. And that is my story on horrible experiments through the years.
That sucks. It reminds me of, I think I mentioned this before, as I want to do it one day, but it's just awful. Unit 731 in Japan during World War II. Have you ever heard of it?
I haven't. No.
Think of like the worst things you can do to humans ever, basically. So it kind of got covered up by like the Holocaust being so widespread and happening around the same time. And Japan was very good at keeping it a secret.
Jeez.
But it was a lot of human experimentation. Have you ever heard of vivisection?
No.
Think of like an autopsy on a live person.
Oh my gosh.
So they would do things like infect them with diseases, and then just cut them open to see how their organs were
Oh my
dealing with that
goodness.
while they were still alive.
That's heinous.
Yep.
Holy shit. Okay. Don't like that. All right. Now tell me all about these lost children.
Of the what, Jess?
The Vangelis. I don't actually know.
So confident. For my story this week, we have to travel back in time 166 years.
Holy shit. Okay.
It's a bit of a history, a bit of a mystery, and unfortunately, a large amount of tragedy.
Oh no.
The story of the lost children of the Alleghenies
Oh.
is a story of It's a story of two young boys who disappeared in the forest of Pavia, Pennsylvania, back in 1856. Joseph and George Cox lived with their mother, Susanna, and father Samuel in a small cabin hidden deep within the Allegheny Mountains of Pennsylvania. They were only 5 and 7 years old. One fateful day, April 24th, 1856 to be exact, just as they were about to sit down to enjoy a meal, their dog, Sport, began barking up the forest surrounding their cabin. Their father assumed that the dog must have chased a squirrel up a tree and grabbed his rifle to follow the sound into the woods to investigate. By the time he returned, the two children were nowhere to be seen.
Oh, sweet babies.
No one could ever know for sure what happened in the time that Samuel left to track down their dog and when he finally returned back. But the most logical assumption would be that the children, George and Joseph, had gone into the woods chasing after their father. Once Susanna noticed her children were missing, she too assumed that they had gone after their father, thinking he might have even taken them with him. When Samuel returned alone, she realized the truth of the matter. They had been gone for quite a while by then. As any frantic parent would do on noticing their children missing, Samuel and Susanna began their search, calling out into the woods, hoping the boys would hear their calls. No matter how much and how loud they yelled for them, the boys never replied. Desperate to find their children, Samuel ran to get help from their nearest neighbor, and within a day, there were thousands of people scavenging the bushes around the Cox's cabin for any trace of the boys.
Good.
People came from as far as 50 miles away from where the Coxes lived, which was a very big deal back in 1856. They searched in daylight until they could no longer see, turning to carrying lit torches and lighting fires when evening came. They thought there was a chance the boys would spot the fires and wander towards them. Close by the cabin was a stream that had been overflowed by the melting spring snow, and searchers were sure that there was no way the boys would have been able to get across it without drowning. Still, despite the natural barrier, the search turned up nothing. There was no trace whatsoever of little George and Joseph.
That's weird.
They expanded the search to look along the length of the stream. They feared the worst at this point, that they might find the drowned bodies of the boys somewhere along the length of the stream. Still, they found nothing. After 2 long days of searching, it was decided that there was little chance of finding the boys alive if they were to find them at all. The nights were so cold still, and if the boys were still hanging on to life by then, they should have found them. Suspicion began to fall upon the parents, Samuel and Susanna, and the community's outpouring of sympathy and support soon turned to accusation. Was there a chance the parents actually murdered their own children? Did they make up the story of their disappearance to extort money from sympathetic neighbors? As days went on, it seemed like the most likely situation. All those people who came out to help them began focusing their effort on searching the Cox cabin and surrounding land in search of the boys' bodies, now believed to be hidden somewhere on the property by their parents. Again, their efforts were in vain. It had been 10 days, and still there was no sign of George and Joseph. The searchers became increasingly hostile towards the Coxes, certain they were to blame, despite any evidence. Then, one man's prophetic dream brought forth a glimmer of hope.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Tell me.
Not far from the cabin the Coxes called home lived a farmer by the name of Jacob Dibert. During the commotion of the searching, he told his wife that he wished he could dream of where the boys were located. On May 2nd, he did.
Ooh.
He dreamed he was walking along a path in the woods near the cabin. He crossed a stream on a fallen log, walked by a dead deer and a child's shoe lying along the path, and then found the boys tucked into the foot of a broken birch tree. Upon waking from his dream, Jacob didn't think much of it. He assumed it was just a case of wishful thinking. It had been on his mind before falling asleep, so it wasn't at all strange to have dreamt of the boys. However, when he had the same exact dream the following night, and the night after that one, he couldn't shake the feeling that maybe it wasn't just a dream after all.
Oh.
He took his brother-in-law with him and went looking for the landmarks he could remember from his dream. What happens next is nothing short of eerie. They found every landmark Jacob passed in his dream.
Oh my gosh.
They followed the path through the woods, crossed the fallen log across the stream, saw the deer carcass, then the child's shoe, and nestled in the roots of a broken birch tree, there they found the bodies of George and Joseph Cox.
Oh.
It was 13 days after they had originally gone missing. Under other circumstances, suspicion might have shifted from Susanna and Samuel on to Jacob. After all, how could he have known the whereabouts of the two boys if he hadn't had something to do with their disappearance? Upon closer inspection of the bodies, both children appeared to have died from exposure, so Jacob and the parents were off the hook. They put the pieces of the puzzle together to figure out what might have happened to the boys that day in April. The boys must have followed their father into the woods, only to get lost amongst the brush. They made it across the stream by traversing the fallen log. This put them far outside the perimeter of most of the searches. Once they got across, it was likely they couldn't find their way back, and eventually laid down amongst the roots of the broken birch when they grew too tired to carry on. Their tiny bodies stayed in the woods, waiting to be found more than a week later. Now, the boys' place of rest beneath the birch is marked with a memorial. It was erected in 1910 by the people of Pavia, who had been fundraising since 1906 for a monument dedicated to the boys. To this day, people venture into the woods to leave flowers and toys on their grave. If you want to pay respects to the boys, the road to the lost children of the Alleghenies monument is mostly dirt and gravel, devoid of any cell phone service. Located on State Game Lands 26 in Bedford County, Pennsylvania, you can reach it by traveling along Route 869 and following Monument Road for almost 2 miles through the state park forest. When you arrive at the parking lot, it is but a short walk back through the woods. Since the monument rests on hunting grounds, it is mandated that you wear blaze orange clothing during certain times of the year when you go, so as not to be accidentally shot.
Oh, jeez.
Check the Pennsylvania Game Commission for details. Many who have visited the location report strange occurrences, leading them to believe that the boys' spirits still haunt the place where they died. Some say they've heard children's footsteps and voices, while others claim to have seen children's footprints on the ground near the monument. Katie Eckenrode and her friends knew the story of the lost children of the Alleghenies when they decided to do a little amateur ghost hunting as teenagers. She is still convinced there are spirits in the forests surrounding the monument. It kind of freaked me out, she said in an interview with the Seattle Times. Alone in the pitch black woods, the teens encountered unexplained footsteps, children's voices, and falling rocks. It could very well be that the spirits of George and Joseph never left their spot at the bottom of the broken birch. Short, but not so sweet story.
Oh, the poor sweet boys.
I know.
Ugh,
Super sad.
it's so sad.
I Like if you look up photos of their monument, it's like all covered in like chicken wire, and so people can't like vandalize it. But there's
Oh,
all sorts of like teddy bears and toys
that's
laid
so
out for them.
sweet. Oh, I love that.
Although I do think it's kind of funny that they're like, check when you're going because hunters
Yeah.
might mistake you for a deer.
Yeah. That's so funny. Oh my gosh.
Pennsylvania's not too far from us, Jess. We could go.
Is it not?
I don't think if you drive straight down across the border, it's not that far.
Let me see.
But I've been there.
I think I have too. I think I've driven through Pennsylvania, honestly. It's 5.5 hours.
Not bad.
Yeah, let's go.
Okay. What is that in relation to Ashley?
That's what I was wondering.
Where is she now? West Virginia? She's only one state down.
3.5 hours away.
From you?
No, from Pennsylvania.
Oh.
The whole trip is 9.5 hours.
From where you are?
Yeah, from where I am to Pennsylvania to West Virginia. I don't want to triangulate Ashley's location. That'd be fun.
Yeah.
I'm broke, but let's go.
What else is there? That's like Salem. Where's Massachusetts?
It's further up to the right.
Let's go there first.
I've been there. I love Salem. Portsmouth, New Hampshire is like one of my favorite places. One of my favorite restaurant is there.
Ooh, what kind of restaurant?
It's just like I don't know, just a restaurant. They have a po' boy. It's so good. It's called The Kitchen in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. There it is. Yeah.
Yeah, we should like make a list of things to see, and then Ashley can meet us.
Yeah.
Up that way.
Yeah. All right. Got any jokes for me?
Nope, but I'll find one. A ham sandwich walks into a bar and orders a beer. Bartender says, "Sorry, we don't serve food here."
Okay.
What's a Karen called in Europe?
Caron.
An American.
Oh my gosh. Oh, that's funny. Yo mama's so old, her memory is in black and white.
What do you call a bagel that can fly?
I don't know.
A plain bagel.
That took me a second, but I love it.
Where do you find a cow with no legs?
Heaven.
Right where you left it. Just because it doesn't have legs doesn't mean it's dead. Heaven.
Anyways, if you want more of us lovely ladies, and Ashley will be back next time in case you missed her, because we sure did. You can find us on Facebook and Instagram, Histories and Mysteries. You can also send us an email at historiesandmysteries515@gmail.com. And if you want to rate and review us on Spotify and Apple, that would be super wonderful.
Yep. Sometimes I can think of something to say at the end, and other times I'm not there anymore.
It's fine. Well, we look forward to bringing you 2 new stories next week. Bye.
Bye.